public relationer's presentation of Rolling Stone's debunked UVA gang rape story, the journalistic integrity of Sabrina Rubin Erdely. This presentation attempts to cover in detail the PR management crisis of Rolling Stone and their ill fated article. It will cover things like why a crisis management plan needs to be in place, what is public relations and why it is important, what happens without PR, what crisis management does for a brand, the crisis at hand, how the crisis was handled, how the crisis could have been avoided, and the strategy for recovery. Companies and people need public relations because it promotes editorial coverage on topics that are honest, important, and relevant. Public relations provide free media coverage for television, websites, magazines, and other outlets. Having public relations also means having a strategic plan in place to navigate negative reactions from the public with as little damage as possible. The internet allows stories to be published faster than ever, and it only takes one story to damage a reputation. Without public relations, the race to post a story first can get sloppy, and sometimes not all the information being posted is thoroughly checked. This is what happened to Rolling Stone magazine. Crisis management looks at potential threats and crises from many different angles and sets up a plan for success before a public move is made. The PR team for a specific brand will have a crisis management plan set in place long before a crisis occurs, with making which makes dealing with the issues a lot smoother and more effective. This team can be more proactive rather than scrambling around waiting for the last minute and unsure of what to do. On November 19th of 2014, an article by journalist Sabrina Rubin Early was published in Rolling Stone magazine. It covered a story about an alleged rape at the University of Virginia. The victim, Jackie, stated that she had been beaten and raped at a frat party but did not report it right away. She decided to go back to her home with her parents and reported the assault when she went back to school at the end of the semester. People questioned the article because only Jackie's word was taken into account. Many inconsistencies were found in the story, and readers accused the publication of not checking the facts. Erdely reassures the public that the men accused were in fact the real people, but danced around the questions asked about when they were never contacted in the interviews. The police started a 5-month long investigation at the fraternity after the article was published and inconsistencies were confirmed. An example of the police findings was that the victim claimed she had called her mother after the incident, but her phone records show no phone calls were made. This inconsistency made it hard to prove that the rape ever happened, and is why the validity of the article was in question. Other facts around Other facts were found to be untrue as well, such as the fraternity not having a social function on the date in question, as well as a friend of the victims claiming that Jackie was shaken up but not injured, when Jackie's account stated she had been injured physically. Columbia journalists, at Rolling Stone's request, wrote an article about the inconsistencies in which Erdely replied, "Reading the Columbia account of the mistakes and misjudgments in my reporting was a brutal and humbling experience." She said in part, "I want to offer my deepest apologies to Rolling Stone's readers to my Rolling Stone editors and colleagues, to the UVA community, and to any victims of sexual assault who may feel fearful as the result of my article. The publication retracted the story and published a statement from the editor explaining that there were discrepancies in the story. The editor wrote the following apology letter to readers. This report was painful reading to me personally and to all of us at Rolling Stone. It is also, in its own way, a fascinating document, a piece of journalism, as Call describes it, about failure in journalism. With its publication, we are officially retracting a rape on campus. We are also committing ourselves to a series of recommendations about journalistic practices that are being spelled out in the report. We would like to apologize to our readers and to all of those who were damaged by our story and the ensuing fallout, including members of the Phi Kappa Psi fraternity, the UVA administrators, and students. Sexual assault is a serious problem on college campuses, and it is important that rape victims feel comfortable stepping forward. It saddens us to think that their willingness to do so might be diminished by our failings. Will Dana, Managing Editor, Rolling Stone. The editor was said to be leaving the magazine, and an independent investigation from Columbia School of Journalism was to be supervised by Pulitzer Prize winning Steve Carroll, who was also the dean of the school. 24 hours was an acceptable time frame for response in a traditional news cycle. Today, the rapid saturation of a message over social media can occur with just a single well placed message. In a real time oriented response effort, 15 minutes is an effective amount of time to start responding to an action plan before the crisis elevates. However, quick responses can only be made if an action plan is already in place, which means having a crisis response initiative mapped out with assigned crisis team members for specific duties and responsibilities for different situations already in place. The strategy would start by having a complete list of communication channels to monitor and address the audience with, and forming a message that is tailored to each channel and how it is communicated through mobile. Then addressing specific scenarios to check how messages fit. Using a crisis action timeline would help to visualize and organize the response initiative. Team members like channel managers, crisis team members, brand advocates and influencers, and employees and stakeholders would be assigned various roles. In the first 2 hours, immediate response from the company heads with a specific message for the situation would be issued, following by a rechecking of the keyword alert list and monitoring the time cycles. In hours 2 and 3, official messages would be sent out on traditional social media, making sure that they are targeting the problem at hand. During hours 3 through 8, the company would employ heavy monitoring of the crisis, and at hour 5, the team would reassess the effectiveness of the strategy. In addition to this, the team would provide structured communication methods for employees and stakeholders to rapidly communicate the crisis team strategy in the fastest and most effective manner so everybody knows their position, including the spokesperson and the collective message and goal of the crisis campaign. A social media response matrix would be developed to illustrate relationships between the various functions of the campaign and their measurements. The object is to relieve the pressure of the negative stories and conversations. This is done through monitoring and being a part of the conversation so it does not grow unattended and viral. In a strategy for recovery, our recommended steps for recovery are as follows: initiate a crisis response strategy, announce and compose press release of internal actions taken, be proactive in support efforts for rape causes, be proactive in support efforts for UVA and Virginia, be proactive in support for campus safety causes, engage all parties involved for a meeting, engage all parties involved for press conference, monitor internet and social media, engage internet and social media with prompt responses, engage media outlets for television, print, and radio, initiate preventative strategy. With these steps in place, not only could the team have supported and aided Rolling Stone during the crisis and hopefully subsided any major issues from happening, but readers would have been able to see that the magazine cared about the rape causes as a whole and not just selling another magazine or having an exciting and inconsistent story. During a crisis, brand management will ensure that the brand's core value and message are being clearly communicated to the audience. This will ensure that people see the brand as wanting to help the situation rather than just saving their own reputation or even worse, just selling another magazine. In the long run, this helps to build trust even when trust may have been damaged, which clearly happened with the journalistic integrity of this story. As a recap to initiatives that should take place in a PR management crisis, we see that it is good to know the difference between crisis management and pre crisis monitoring, to also monitor social conversation with higher degrees of precision due to social media's velocity and rapid spread at any moment. We should also have a chart with the crisis strategy process, contact, and team players listed. Having a war games analysis completed to identify relevant crisis scenarios is also very handy. We should have specific responses the team is aware of for specific situations. Also, have a file and a message sharing platform to speed communications among team members and stakeholders. It's good to identify influencers and advocates way before a crisis occurs. And finally, use the right tools before crisis for familiarity before the crisis occurs.